Celtic's consistency in this competition is absolutely remarkable. 38 games, 36 wins.
Adam, he did give Celtic that different dimension where they can go a bit more direct, and Celtic are never going to be that team that just punts the ball aimlessly. Rangers.
This Rangers team is always second. They're always going to be second. They're always going to be runners up. They're never going to be winning trebles like Celtic. Is there anyone who could stop Celtic winning another treble? Welcome to this week's 20 Minute Tims. I'm your host Jamie, and I'm joined by Melly.
Yes, it won't be Rangers anyway.
And Stephen.
Hello, how's it going?
Do you know that result against Rangers, or the result that Rangers got rather? I thought that was so much of a foregone conclusion, Stephen, that I didn't do my usual check-ins on the Rangers score. I was playing PlayStation and a friend just happened to say, does Rangers get beat? And I was like, no. And it was remember Neil Lennon went, Hamilton? Remember that moment?
Yeah.
That was me. I was like, huh?
Well, I paid attention towards the end because I am an obsessed mank, as they would like to call us, and I will make no apologies for doing so. I actually kind of forgot the game was on because, like you, I saw they're playing at home to Queen's Park, and I thought, no, that's a day off for me. I can take my obsession off for the day. And it was only towards about half an hour, again, I was in a group chat and someone put in the words Rangers, laughing emoji, laughing emoji, laughing emoji, and I thought, surely not. I turned it on and sure enough that was going on, but that was, look, I know we're talking about being obsessed and all that, but look, they're the main rivals for yet another trophy, as you know, as the bookies would have it. But that was an absolute all-timer result. That's like one of the worst in either of their histories. And the miracle, the billions to one chance of us being born in this specific time, and we were alive to see Queen's Park beat Rangers at Ibrox. Drink it in, gentlemen. It's an absolute classic.
Oh, glory days, isn't it? It's one of those ones that you don't expect, and then you see it. So I went round to my mum's for dinner, and I got in my uncle's like, it's just 1-0 to Queen's Park. I was like, don't worry, they'll get their penalty. And then they did get the penalty and they missed it. I was like, oh, this is great stuff.
I know, a 95-minute penalty and they couldn't even stick it away. I think the good thing about it is, though, Stephen, once again, all the Rangers fans out there, they've just taken it on the chin. Then they've not had any mental meltdowns this time.
No.
They just do things normally. I saw one of their fan media guys was in the press conference and he went, are you going to resign? And Philip Clement went, well, first of all, I could buy and sell you. And he went, no, I'm not going to resign. He goes, you've lost the confidence of the fans then. You can't continue. I thought, well, these Rangers fans don't seem to understand where they are as a club. We made the point before, and I've made the point before in the podcast, that see this Rangers you support, this isn't the Rangers your dad used to support.
No.
Metaphorically and realistically, they're two different Rangerses. This Rangers team is always second. They're always going to be second. They're always going to be runners up. They're never going to be winning trebles like Celtic. So I don't really understand. I know they probably want their team to do a bit better than losing to Queen's Park, but beyond sacking the manager, there's no plan. They just want the guy sacked. They just want him sacked. Sack him and then do what? Keep finishing second, presumably.
It's one of those dilemmas because there's no point in sacking him because they won't replace him with anyone good. We've had that discussion before. I don't buy into any of that stuff about how you want him to keep his job because they might replace him with somebody competent. When? Who are they going to get?
They've had so many tries.
So I don't believe any of that, but there's no point in sacking him because it won't get any better. But likewise, there's no excuse to have a manager who lost at home to Queen's Park on top of all the other disasters this season and to keep him in a job because you might not get anyone better. So it's a kind of chicken and egg there. I don't really know what they could do with it, but it's an absolute belter. And I've been consuming some content, as you can imagine.
Oh, yes.
It's just, it's weird though, because it's been simultaneously absolute uproar, but also not quite as bad as I thought it was going to be. For a manager to survive that is previously unthinkable. For a Rangers manager to be 13 points behind at this stage of the season in February and out of all the trophies in Scotland, and to lose at home at Queen's Park, and for them to be there's a plan in place where,
I think the chairman says judge him by the end of next
season. Incredible. Next season, a full season to go.
I know I'm springing a podcast sin here, right? You're not supposed to ask questions you don't know the answer to in a podcast, and maybe other people don't know. But I heard a stat on Radio Scotland, Melly said Rangers have won 3 trophies out of the last 42 available. Why did they stop at 42?
Right.
Why did they pick 3 out of 42? Because presumably winding it back to 50 might be a better stat. And then if you wind it back to 50, presumably they've only won 5 out of the last 50.
Right. So that's 14 seasons then, 42 trophies. Quick maths, is that right?
Right. So that's why they've wound it back to that. I mean, it really is glorious stuff, and it never. You think sometimes you're going to get tired of watching Rangers making absolute horlicks of things, and then you just see how well the fans take it. Then you enjoy all the podcasts and the videos and the social media and those really terrible podcasts where people performatively get angry and they sort of G themselves up to get angrier and angrier. And I don't know what point they're trying to make, but what they do is they just create little clips for Celtic fans to enjoy and we pass it around group chats and all that. It's honestly, it's brilliant. It's my favourite time of year.
You can set your watch by all the. What we need is right good Rangers men. We need Scottish. We need a Scottish identity. We need Terry Butcher bleeding for the head stuff. We need people being pinned up against the dressing room wall with a throat. Is that what Celtic are doing? Is that the difference? Is that why Celtic are successful? Is that what Liverpool are doing just now?
They're running out of people, aren't they? So it's back to Stevie G now. Is they're just rewriting Stevie G's history at Rangers because he got one.
Just give it to McInnes. Just you might as well run the McInnes experiment because they're choking to give it to him, and that's the end of it. But really, is there anyone who can? I mean, that you don't want to get too cocky about things, but the way Celtic are playing just now, and you're looking at who's left, they're surely merely not another treble beckons.
Hopefully, it looks like we will get to Hampden again, a quarter-final, so you wouldn't... I was kind of wanting Rangers in the next round just for the sheer fact that, look, if we get them at Ibrox, they're going to need to give us a proper allocation because you need to do that in the Cup.
Yes.
And then that hopefully dispels that myth. But it wouldn't have. I know it wouldn't have. But this is better, isn't it? They're going out. And again, when Celtic went through a poor spell under Ronnie Dylan, we went out the Cup, you're going, just giving them a free run at it. And that's what they must just feel it all the time. If Celtic don't put us out, somebody will put us out and we've just given them a free run at it. So, look, it's brilliant for us. We get to have our laughs on a bi-weekly basis sometimes, and they're stuck in this rut where they think, aye, but we're good in Europe, so we must be good, but we can't beat any Scottish team if they sit in. So they're not a very good team. I've seen 15 minutes of the game, and they were absolutely terrible. It's get the ball out wide, and Jeff Dale just launch it into the box when nobody's there. So there's no pattern of play, there's no style about them, but surely they must be able to get a manager with a bit of style, but all they want is anger.
The fact is, Stephen, all this boils down to is we need to rattle them next time we play them because that result at Ibrox is starting to look like a wild, massively wild outlier for both us and them.
No, ridiculous. I know that it still smarts to this day that they managed to turn in that.
It doesn't make sense.
No, that's why it really hurts that one because it's such an anomaly in this season. It really it doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever. But the potential of a treble here, I mean, you've got to think along those terms. Even, I mean, the start of the season, that will have been a goal that Brendan Rodgers will have set anyways to win the treble. I think he's been fairly open about that. We've spoken about that before, about how going out of the League Cup last season was something that really annoyed him, something he wanted to get back. So the Scottish Cup will be firmly in the sights now because Brendan Rodgers, he is the one who established this current trend or current now tradition of winning trebles at this club. He's the one that wasn't the first to do it, but he established the
normality,
bar basically,
the almost routine now of winning treble. It'll never be quite routine, but it's like decades and decades of hardly ever winning trebles, and now we're just racking them up one after the other in the last 10 years or so. It's incredible, but Brendan Rodgers is the man who set this ball rolling. So he'll be acutely aware of that, and he will definitely be targeting the Scottish Cup. But of course, it's a cup competition. You don't want to kind of count your chickens on it. Anything can happen. But you look back at the history or the recent history of Celtic in the Scottish Cup, and it doesn't like these anomalies, the romance of the cup, these sort of one-offs where anything can happen. They don't happen to Celtic. Liverpool went out of the cup at the weekend because they played a slightly weakened team and they were caught napping, really. They went out to a much lower team. So these things can happen. But for whatever reason, for a number of reasons probably, they don't to Celtic. See, since Brendan Rodgers...
You're majorly tempted me here.
Well, yeah, of course.
I'm sweating here listening to you.
Of course, I mean, that's famous last words and all that. And there's still a lot of work to do, but I'm just pointing to recent history to show that it's effectively Celtic own the Scottish Cup to all intents and purposes.
So how many fixtures do we reckon Brendan's played in this tournament?
Well, since, I mean, it must be, almost 20 or something like that. I think since Brendan Rodgers took over the first time, Celtic have played now, just coincidentally, now that we've played 2 rounds in this competition, coincidentally, Celtic have now played 38 fixtures in the Scottish Cup, which is an entire league season. And that's only going back 7 or 8 seasons now. So they've played an entire league season. They've won 36 of those games out of 38. Since Brendan Rodgers isn't responsible for all of that, because that's Lennon and Ange Postecoglou as well. But Brendan Rodgers isn't responsible for either of the 2 defeats that they've come in that as well. So Brendan Rodgers is still to this day undefeated in this tournament.
That's ridiculous.
So
knockout tournament football is absolutely
He's
ridiculous.
lost 1 knockout football.
Yeah, so that's it. That's it. The whole point here is that Celtic's consistency in this competition is absolutely remarkable. 38 games, 36 wins. Now, of course, it's a cup, so you can't rack up multiple losses in the same season. So the losses is always going to be low to an extent, but even the 2 losses, I think, where one was to Rangers after extra time, and the other one doesn't count because John Joe Kenny scored an OG to put us out that one. So other than that, there's been 2 penalty shootouts in there, which Celtic have both won. So it is really an incredible record that Celtic have put up in this competition. Really, it's every right to call this the Scottish Cup effectively Celtic's own trophy at this point, and that will definitely be the goal. The amount of goals that they've scored over 100 goals, something like 112 goals, conceded 20, and this is stretching back 7 or 8 years. So it's
ridiculous, these stats.
Of course, 38 games is a lot, but to hammer that point home, there have only been 42 fixtures, there have only been 42 rounds played in the Scottish Cup since Brendan Rodgers took over. Celtic have been in 38 of them, or 40 of them, and have won 38. It's incredible.
Do you just carry about this information in your head at all
You tell
times?
I'm reading these. I'll put it down there if it's
obvious.
Yeah.
Listen, you don't follow us on Patreon. I can't see myself. You don't follow us on Patreon, and you really should, and here's why. Because you've missed 4 podcasts since the last time you saw us here on the flagship. You're watching adverts on the flagship podcast, and you're waiting a wee bit long to get it. All of those things can be benefits to your life and to us if you support us on patreon.com/20minutetims for ad-free podcasts, extra videos, and extra rating. And yeah, patreon.com/20minutetims. A terrible end to the plug there. We're getting a laughing out the way early though, because a lot of talk of knockout football and how well Brendan Rodgers is doing it. Patreon.com/20minutetims. We scout all of Celtic's Champions League opponents, and that's what we did when we had a little look at Bayern Munich, Celtic's next Champions League opponents, Melly, and yeah, didn't make for easy listening.
No, it's going to be a difficult tie, and it was always going to be that when it came up, Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. Come on, we did well here.
I know.
And that is a punishment for it, but it's a different game for Celtic, isn't it? Because it's not a free hit, of course, you want to go out, and it's not the glamour friendly that some people have labelled it after Celtic didn't do what they were meant to do in the transfer window. But it's a chance for Celtic to go out.
You mean the haters and losers?
It's a chance for Celtic to go out home leg first, so they can kind of play their own game and see where we are. Because Borussia Dortmund was a tough one. It was away from home. Villa was a tough one away from home. This is going to be the hardest team we've played this season, probably. We're going to have a tie against them at home. It's going to be a 2-legged affair. It's something different now where we can go, right, is there a point in us shelling everything we do and try to block up Bayern Munich, or do we just go out and see what we are in this game and go, do you know what, this is what we can do, this is what we can't do, this is what we need to improve on. I'm as scared about it as I am looking forward to it. Celtic Park under the lights is brilliant. Knockout tie first leg, but they're a formidable outfit, and I think they're just starting to really purring the domestically as well. So it's going to be a tough ask. But that's why these are the games you want to play in.
Yeah, of course. And Bayern Munich are one of the true European giants. There's no avoiding that. They're massive, and as Real Madrid were.
They're bigger than that.
They're bigger than that. They're large. but Bayern Munich, well, they've already beaten RB Leipzig at home this season. Are Bayern Munich better than them? Yes.
Significantly better.
Yes, they are. But I hadn't really been paying attention to what he'd been getting up to since he left England. But obviously, one of their bigger names is Harry Kane. But I looked at him the other day, and I'd kind of got it into my head. I don't know where, just one of these kind of false impressions I'd built up in my head without paying any attention. I'd kind of got it into my head that he'd gone over there and he'd been injured a lot of the time, because I hadn't really heard that much about him, but I looked at it. He scored 28 goals in 28 games this season alone. overall for them, he's got something like 70 goals in 72 games for them. So he's over there quietly racking up like Ronaldo and Messi and Haaland and Lewandowski numbers over there. So yeah, we've got that to look forward to. That, I mean, you can take your pick of a number of danger men that they have. Elise and Musiala and all that. They've got so many good attacking players. I'd heard that they might be struggling at the back a little bit. They could have a few injuries, but I did notice that at the weekend, Sacha Boy played at right back. A man who could have been a Bahoy as well. He was the one that turned Celtic down. It was Ange tried to sign him in 2021, and he said no. Said no thanks, and Celtic ended up with Juranovic. So no, nothing really lost there. But I could have been a Celtic player. But okay, it's going to be very, very difficult. That said, there's no reason to be going into a game like that at home and not trying to win, not turning up to that game and thinking we can actually win this. Whether you win the tie or not is a completely different kettle of fish here. That may be completely out of our hands. They're a very, very good team. But maybe try and get them a black eye at home.
Something feels different about this tie. I don't know why. Maybe it is because it's the knockout thing. Maybe it is because it's Bayern Munich. It really feels like, I know it's ridiculous, this kind of feels like the Champions League proper a wee bit. You know, Bayern Munich are coming. There's real stakes. There's real risk in the game. And as you said, Stephen, they've got some really, really good players. And Harry Kane is a player that, you know, everyone listening to the podcast will have heard about. I was in the same boat as you. I didn't really know an awful lot about his scoring antics until you'd said, and obviously every time you tell me something I check it to make sure it's not lies, and it turns out it wasn't a fib. He's absolutely banging them in, and I'm shitting myself after it.
Never trust anyone, especially podcasters.
Well, I always do my own research on things like that. So no, I'm worried. I'm excited about this game, but there is just something at the back of my mind thinking, you know, it's been such a long time since Celtic really turned it on in the Champions League. You know, in one of these games like we used to see John Strachan, or sometimes you see John Neil Lennon pull off a real shock, and it always goes one or two ways with Celtic in the Champions League. Seemingly, we have a game where we perform quite well, but there's this thing that just lingers, and it's that sort of acute failure that we get sometimes. You know, that way where it just immediately collapses around the ears. We thought we were going to see it against Aston Villa. We did see it against Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund rather, but the difference was it happened at Aston Villa, Melly, but we managed to regroup. We managed to push on. We managed to get ourselves back into the game, but ultimately we lost the game. But that was a big tie against a big team at a big ground with really, really good footballers and a proven coach. And so we didn't look out of place in that game. And I think that's what's making me feel a bit more encouraged about the Bayern tie.
Yeah, we always go on about this, and that's the difficulty we have in it, because with Celtic, it's always going to be, look, we're not going to keep a team together for 4, 5, 6 years. So when you're talking about learning from it, you're learning for the next game and the next game. That season where you're in the Champions League, and from the Borussia Dortmund game, we can't let that happen again. We have to learn from that. It was all of Celtic's Champions League failures in Europe over the years, just all into one game, where it was goal after goal and there was no stemming the flow at all. Whereas the Aston Villa game got off to a worse start, and this could be 8-9 here if they wanted, because they were that good as well and that quick and can punish you. But Celtic managed to get themselves together. Neil Lennon talked about it during the game. Celtic's body language is good. They believe in what they're doing, and they kept doing that. So a lot of it is belief, and this game might be a bit different as well. It's the first game probably in the Champions League this season at Celtic Park where we're going into it real underdogs, and that gets the crowd going, doesn't it? That's what you want. It's going to be that atmosphere. If Celtic can not concede in the first couple of minutes, we've seen it, like the Real Madrid game, the atmosphere, and that was brilliant. A couple of seasons ago, we went out 3-0 losers in the end, but the atmosphere was brilliant, and we did sort of give them a bloody nose. But unfortunately, in this day and age, giving these teams a bloody nose and coming away with a 3-0 defeat is what can happen.
Just angers them.
Yeah, so like Celtic are going up against a team that the worry is that the forward players they have, even if you shut off for a split second, you can be punished. Like the Aston Villa, the first goal, Celtic didn't do that much wrong, and before you know it, the ball's in the back of the net. And sometimes you have to go, they're just a better team than us. Everything's quicker. But Celtic are going into this off the back of good results, resting a lot of players and scoring a lot of goals. There's only one thing missing from Wednesday night, which will be pivotal for Celtic, but everything else is rosy.
We're going to talk about Daizen, but I want to talk about the players who maybe can make a difference in the night, Stephen. And obviously we had the conversation last week. And if you want to see a bin fire, look in the YouTube comments for that one about Celtic's failure to sign a striker. We don't need a striker. MAEDA can play up front. Listen, I heard it all. I heard all your arguments. I'm impressed by none of them. Celtic did fail to sign a striker in the January window. However, that being said, Adam Idah looks as if he's got a whole new lease of life.
Yeah.
As it looks like a player that's ready to grasp that opportunity. I was so pleased for him, and we so pleased for him watching him against Villa, because he didn't look out of place in what was effectively against a Premier League team. He looked every bit a Premier League player. Strong, physical, great finishes, making a nuisance of himself. And he really changes the dynamic of the Celtic attack. And if he can replicate that against Bayern, look, I'm not going to be as foolish to say we've definitely got a chance against Bayern Munich, purely because I've seen this movie, as Melly said, so many times before. These teams are just,
Turbo elite, innit?
They are turbo elite teams. It's not the same as, I know I said it's been a while since we've seen the likes of Celtic causing problems like we did under Martin Neil and Strachan and even Neil Lennon and against the likes of Lazio. I think the reason that was a while ago is because these teams have just exponentially got better and better and better. But you need to have a bit of hope. And when I see players like Adam Idah and the way he performed against Villa, I thought, he does look like a Champions League striker. He looks as if he's really taken his chance the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, Aston Villa was obviously very eye-catching because he got the 2 goals, 2 brilliant finishes, and I think he was phenomenal all round on the night. But I think he's been very good in Europe overall. I think he was really good against Atalanta. Now, of course, that was a 0-0 draw, so he doesn't come away with any of the plaudits that a striker would want. A striker's going to want to score goals, but I thought his all-round play was actually very good. Gave Celtic an outlet, and I remember the talk at the time was like Kasper Schmeichel was always looking for that kind of direct ball. It became quite a kind of fascinating duel between their centre-half and Idah, because he then started anticipating that ball from Schmeichel, and it was a good kind of physical challenge. So I think he stood up really well in that game as well. I think he'd scored against Bratislava, so he does have a little bit of Champions League pedigree as such now behind him, and the goals against Aston Villa will do him the world of good. We've been saying it for weeks, so just said, look, big man needs a goal. We said it for several weeks in a row. It was never really about his ability. He just needed a goal to get going, and he's basically done that and not stopped since. This is now the best season of his career. This is the first time he's ever hit double figures in goals in his career. And as we record this, this will come out on his 24th birthday. So it's not as if he's like really young and just sort of developing into his role. He has been around quite a long time. He's never really been all that prolific a striker. And so as we're recording this,
as soon as he said
he's 23,
right,
and by the time it comes out, he's 24, and he's 23 until then. You can't laugh in the room. You can't just stifle and laugh and expect me not to do it.
Fucking done it again, Melly.
so all this is, look,
he can't keep getting away with it.
He's not a young player, but what I mean is he's been around quite a long time. He does have a bit of Premier League experience. I think he played a season maybe in the Premier League, but he's never really been a prolific goal scorer, so this is now the best season of his career, and he deserves it for all the work he's put in. He went a long time without scoring goals there. He went something like 4 in 25, 14 games, albeit a lot of them off the bench without scoring at all. But now he's getting the goals that his work and his ability deserve, and they're all good finishes as well. But he's doing really well just now.
I just think Celtic are a different animal with him in the team.
Yeah.
I've said it quite a few times this season, and I love Kyogo. I do not hate Kyogo, but I just feel that when
there's one way to make people think you hate Kyogo, it's to repeatedly say I do not hate Kyogo, because people will be like, oh, where's that come from?
I know, was he covering up?
The YouTube comments, that's where it comes from. Not that we're bothered about them, but Adam Idah gives Celtic that different dimension where they can go a bit more direct, and Celtic are never going to be that team that just punts the ball aimlessly, Rangers, into areas and hopes for the best. Celtic are always going to look to play out, and if they can't do that, they've got Idah. But Idah just gives us something different. When he plays, a lot of the time, I feel he gets much more touches than Kyogo. He's more involved in the build-up play, and it's just gives us something different, an absolute nuisance for defenders, because we know what it's like in Scotland. It's going to be physical, and look, when you get to Europe, there's physical and technical, so you need a bit of both to mix up. And if you're playing with Kyogo in Europe, you're just looking for cutbacks or to get him in behind, and with Idah you can do that, and you can play it forward. You can look to get it to his chest and work off that. So Celtic with our front three of going to be Kuhn and Jota by the looks of it alongside him, we can go direct to them, and that's not long balls. That can be balls in behind for the two wingers to run onto, and we can hit Kuhn right in the chest, and then hit IDAH right in the chest, and hopefully he can bring other players into the game. So I think we're just a bit more of a well-rounded team with IDAH in it. Doesn't mean to say I think IDAH's a better player than Kyogo. I'd say that Kyogo's the better player, but he's not here anymore. IDAH's got a chance, and maybe this is a chance for him. He's never been the number 1, number 9 in a team. There's always been somebody there. He's always been up and coming or something like that. Right now, he is Celtic's only senior striker there.
Yeah.
The pressure is on him, and that can go one way or the other, but it looks like he's revelling in it.
And what an opportunity, though. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You're a Champions League, you're Celtic's number 9, you're Celtic's number 1 striker, as Melly says. There's a Champions League knockout tie against Bayern Munich coming up, and your form's returned. I mean, it's great for him. You said Jota and Kuhn. I can't convince you for Yang. No, can't be convinced.
Nope.
Okay. How do you think Jota's going to fare getting thrown right in?
Well, he's certainly well ahead of schedule, considering we were told that he was miles off it in terms of fitness.
He looks skinny.
He
Doesn't he?
does,
He's got weight.
yeah.
I put up on our Twitter last week, because I remember he did the celebration, and I remember looking at it going, God, he looks a bit a stone down.
Yeah.
And it's just, obviously, it's just the toll of not playing an awful lot of football in the last 18 months. I'm sure it's been lifestyle stuff, as in AKA he's been stressed out, he's not been particularly happy, he's not been at peak performance. But comparing those two celebrations, the iconic one that met over Melly's shoulder there that he did against Rangers, and the one that he did against Motherwell, the guy's lost about a stone by the looks of it. So he is a wee bit behind schedule in terms of getting that Jota back, Stephen. But what you're referring to in terms of how he's looking at his play.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of even just his minutes on the pitch, I think he's ahead of schedule in terms of what we were told, because he's already started one game so far, I think. And I was expecting it to be cameos here and there for maybe the next month or so, because that was all the talk. I was only going off the information at hand. It was just that he even said himself, we had Lewis, our contributor, at the Welcome Home Jota press conference, and he asked him if he was ready to go, and he said, look, I need to be clear about this. I haven't played consistently in a long time, so it might be a while. So in terms of that, he seems to be ahead of schedule for being involved. This is a big test for him to be thrown
Here's
into.
Bayern Munich, mate.
Yeah, it's a very big test for him.
Do you
But
think, Brent, I know this is, I know how it sounds, right, before the words come out my mouth, but just everything that you've said there about being behind schedule, but the amount of football he's not played, do you think Brendan is, do you think he's swithering about Yang? Do you think it's Jota? I mean, if it was all of us, it would be Jota, straight in. I assume, right, us three here in agreement. But I wonder if the manager's thinking, guy here, he's a lot fitter than Jota. I think we're definitely, I would be very, very surprised anyway to see Jota play the full 90 minutes over both legs. Do you think there's any deliberation at all about Yang?
in terms of
Yang's
starting,
got a lot of fans out there.
yeah, look, Yang, as we sit here, he's just off one of the games of his life so far against Raith Rovers. I think he was very good. He scored a goal and set up another two, which is the main complaint about Yang, is that he doesn't do enough of that, anywhere near enough. I know it's lower league opposition, but it's still something. He can only do it ahead of to the team that's ahead of him. The trouble is he doesn't do it often enough, and I don't really want to do it with Yang just now about the whole debate if there's a player in there, because what I want to do is get away from being on that good bad roller coaster. If he does it consistently, I'll happily entertain that conversation, but as it stands, it's just a one-off game. Starting this game, there might be a call to do it, but I would much prefer to see Jota start, and not because Yang's terrible or anything like that, but I think when Yang came on against RB Leipzig, he was actually good. He was like an agent of chaos out there. He just started being quite direct. He was dribbling a lot. He actually looked quite nice touches. So I think he's capable of doing that. But I would much rather see Jota from the start and have him potentially fade than bringing Jota on to chase a game when we're potentially 3 or 4-0 down. I think that would be kind of futile. This is me sitting here ahead of the game, hoping that we're still in the game when we're making any changes whatsoever. But I would much rather see it that way around, because while Jota might be behind schedule, his touch and his passing and his finishing so far, he's got that one goal, all look really quite up to speed, even if his sort of physicality isn't, even if his sort of cardiovascular and his strength, they're not quite there yet. The touch is. I mean, he's looked superb so far.
He lit up that Dundee game.
Yeah.
When he came on, he looked absolutely brilliant. Listen, Daizen MAEDA. This is the guy we'll be needing to talk about since basically we started the podcast. He's he's white hot right now, Daizen MAEDA. He's unbelievable. Everything he touches turns to goals, and his performances for Celtic over the past couple of weeks have been. I've brightened. I've lit up the whole game. I've lit up any game he's played in. Stephen said a couple of weeks ago, Melly, first out the traps with the Daizen MAEDA Player of the Year shout. I think between Stephen saying that and it being debatable to today, I don't think there's any debate about the guy. He's brilliant. That chip he scored against Dundee, he's winning again with every type of goal. Brendan Rodgers is singing his praises. Brendan Rodgers obviously quite happy to play him in the number 9 role. He did say throughout the January window, look, Daizen can play there, but I don't want Daizen to play there. I want my own striker, another striker to come in. Maybe a bit of gamesmanship, maybe a bit of bargaining by Brendan, but the fact of the matter is Daizen's here now. He's played in that 9. He looks brilliant, and I just think there's no stopping the guy. And it's another one where I'm looking at him going, are we in the phase with Daizen of enjoy him while you've got him?
Daizen Player of the Year. You all laughed at me. Well, you're not laughing now.
Nobody laughed at you.
As a great man once said.
Who was that?
It was when Nigel Farage.
Oh, was it? Oh, yeah.
Well, I don't know if he said these words exactly, but
boring.
That's another one, yeah.
Should really stop that on this podcast.
So damn memeable, though. That's the thing.
I don't know if Stephen actually said these words or what he was meaning was Daizen MAEDA's quietly going about becoming Player of the Year. There's no quietly about it anymore, is there? You'd probably say he's the front runner, and he's just can't even say he's exploded on the scene because he's always there. But just recently, you're just starting to see this guy and go, you're probably at your peak of your career right now.
Yeah.
He's just, and you get like that. Sometimes you have guys that go through hot streaks, but he seems to be a guy that you know what he's going to bring to you. He's going to bring that running, that pressing, and all that. But he's starting to bring the technical aspect to his game as well. And maybe this is, I don't know, maybe I doubted it when Brendan Rodgers came in and I thought, you know what, I just don't know if Maeda's going to be technical enough for him. It might be he's an Ange signing and it'll just be, he's perfect for Ange, same as Kyogo, and it just might not work out. But he's got better under Brendan Rodgers, and I wonder if that is the coaching aspect of it. Brendan Rodgers loves working with guys and always trying to improve guys. And if you're working with Daizen MAEDA, you're going, right, I don't need to improve so much of your game. There is little tweaks I need to make. And he seems to be more threatening these days. He's always in goal scoring positions. He's getting himself into these areas where he can't miss it half the time because he's just making it so easy for himself. Love the guy. He's going to be so difficult we're going to see how much we miss him on Wednesday night because there is nobody that can replace him. There's been nobody like him. There probably won't be anybody like him after. He would be one of the first names in the team sheet. It used to be for me, kind of Daizen MAEDA, big game, 100% in the team sheet. See if you're playing Dundee at home. I'm not too sure if you need him. That's all changed now. He's one of the first names in the team sheet, and that goal against Dundee was one for the ages. The whole build-up from Celtic, from the left-back position all the way through to that chip, it was Larsson-esque. And sometimes you think about this guy, is he going to be able to do that? But you look at his goals from this season, the goal against Rangers in the cup final where he takes the ball out the air and then pings the left footer past it. He's improving every game he seems to be playing now.
The one thing we've always sort of pointed to him was he doesn't have there's Daizen doing Daizen things, and usually because he's done something mental or put the ball over the bar from 6 yards out or flighted a cross out right to us or done something. But Mel's right, in the last couple of weeks, this technique has started to come through. Yeah,
I know we don't want to get in the habit of even talking about selling our players here because it's not something we particularly like to do, although we are realistic about the potential of losing players who are turning it on for Celtic. But in Daizen's case, it becomes very much a clear and present danger because it was always the any team in Europe would love to have a guy like that, but he's no good enough finisher and his crossing's a bit wavered. So I don't think he'll probably go under the radar of a lot of scouts. But if he's starting to put all of that together as he's kind of channeling towards, as Melly put it, the sort of peak of his career, it becomes very much a danger.
He is under no radars. No radars are above Daizen now. His performances have been absolutely ridiculous this season. And you know, if that's your main prerogative here is not having Daizen spotted, then maybe not having him in the Bayern is the only positive you can take for that. But I mean, we're really, really, I can't stress it enough. We're going to miss him in this tie.
Yeah, of course. I think that obviously we're up against it anyway, against Bayern Munich, one of the, as I said earlier, true European giants. But without such an important player, not only the pressing machine that he is, he's also been our best attacking player this
Yeah.
season. I mean that's not even debatable now. He's the top scorer. He's the top scorer in the Champions League. He's basically done it all this season. So to be without a guy who is all of that, the guy we previously considered as very important in terms of defending from the front, of course he still is that, but he's now our best attacking footballer all round. To be without that in the biggest and toughest game of the season it goes without saying, tough to take, really. I know that it's essentially his own fault. He got himself sent off for a silly kick, but it's really, really difficult for Celtic because he is completely irreplaceable. And I know I've been through it so many times, just on the subject of potentially losing a player like that. Now, it's not going to happen anytime soon, but you do worry about it because he's playing so well, and especially in Europe. But I think he might be I wouldn't be up for parting with Daizen for even like a record
Not a
fee
chance.
because of how difficult it would be to replace. It would. Well, I say the word difficult, impossible to replace Daizen. Matt O'Reilly has been at times this season sorely missed, but now Arne Engels is really turning it on. He's been superb recently. So different types of players, but eventually that loss will be balanced out. Kyogo, again, we kind of came to terms with it. Could you get another striker who scores 20, potentially upwards of 30 goals a season? Possibly.
If
it's
Daizen keeps
possible.
this up and Anida keeps up play the way he is, we're not going to miss Kyogo.
Yeah.
I think that's just a fact. I think Hugo's gone. He's gone to France, and there was an immediate worry. We've sold our best player here, but Melly said, right, we've sold our best player, but we've not sold our most important player.
Yeah.
And Daizen is probably our most important player. We've got Jota here. I think I prefer, as a footballer, I know that Kyogo's technically better. I just prefer Daizen. I love him as a footballer. I love him as a character. I love what he brings to the game. I think he's absolutely critical for so much of the success that Celtic have had recently. And you're right in what you're saying. Like, not an awful lot of teams, they often get the impression that they don't know what's hit them with Daizen. When they're playing up against this guy who's relentlessly closing them down everywhere. I saw some Rangers fan sort of clipped there was a highlight of Daizen chasing the ball down. I think it was against Dundee, and he didn't get it. And they were like, look, this is all this guy does. He chases the ball down and doesn't get it. And I thought to myself, yeah, you've managed to find the once or twice he didn't get it. But the fact is, that's Daizen for 90 minutes, 38 games a season. Like, there's no point trying to criticise the guy. This is what makes him as brilliant as he is.
It's funny that because he is, in many ways, he is everything that Rangers lack. But yet at the same time, they'll take a look at him and call him a limited footballer who wouldn't get in our team, etc. Wouldn't get in our bench.
Right, unless they can't help who they support, but they can try and be a bit smart about it, can't they? When there was a clip of Daizen in the 95th minute or something against Raith Rovers, still closing down. Right, he might not get the ball all the time, but see the guy that does have the ball, he's got Daizen MAEDA running after him.
Yeah.
So his time to think, his time to decide what he's going to do is cut down dramatically. Is he going to play the perfect pass he wants because this guy's running at him? See the guy he passes it to, he's been closed down because Daizen MAEDA. It all works at Celtic because we're closing down. The reason Rangers aren't playing well and aren't doing well is because they don't have that. They don't have that style and that finesse about them. Daizen MAEDA is 27 now. By the end of the season, he signed a new deal last season. I think it's a 4-year deal. So at the end of this season, we probably need to sit down with him again and go, can we get you signed up? Because even if he slows down a yard into his 30s, it's still an incredible pace for the guy. So Celtic, if he's going to go, which we obviously hope he doesn't, I think he's one of my favourite ever players at Celtic now. You'd like to think at the end of the season we go, right, let's get this guy signed up because there's just no way of replacing him. And like we said, going into January, you're not going to replace Daizen MAEDA. Kuhn's a brilliant player as well. He'll probably get something to prove going into the Bayern Munich game. But if Daizen MAEDA is going to be out, the next best thing you can have to come in and play against Bayern Munich is Yang. No, it's not. It's not Yang. It is Jota, of course. And Jota's came in and done his thing and been brilliant. And he's got that X factor where we do worry about him and say, like, oh, he might not be up to scratch. But the flicks and tricks are still there. Yeah. And see if I'm going to go and watch that. I'm going to prefer that all day to watching a guy like Yang run into somebody. So we've got 3 good wingers now. That's the way it is, isn't it? And that's what we're asking of Celtic is like, right, see if you take one of our good players out, can the drop-off not be dramatic? And that was always been the problem. The drop-off, Daizen's irreplaceable, but the drop-off, Jota offers you something different, and that's what we've got now.
It's funny to think back to Daizen when Brendan Rodgers first took over. I think you referenced it when maybe the chat was he was not really a Brendan Rodgers player. He's so like lab built for Ange Postecoglou's system. Maybe even he'll take him with him to Spurs. Who knows? That was
Probably
the fear. Well, yeah. So the fear was at the time that Brendan Rodgers is going to come in and we're going to lose this like real cult figure. And the thing about, you said he's one of your favourite Celtic players ever. To an extent, he's been that for almost everyone, really. He's been a really popular figure. But for a long time, it's moved way past that slightly patronising, obviously, like he's running and he's pish crossing and all that. It's gone way away from that to him being now our most effective attacking footballer, which
goals
is
in cup finals, goals against Rangers, goals in the Champions League, done it all.
Absolutely. And as I said, that the idea that Brendan Rodgers wouldn't have wanted him, I think I said a few weeks ago that like Jota, he's not an Ange player, he's not a Brendan Rodgers player, he's a Celtic player. Like the day you find a manager who doesn't want a Jota in your team, you should probably sack that guy. And like Daizen MAEDA is probably to an extent exactly the same. Is you build up this idea that now this guy's this player, this guy's a Neil Lennon player, this guy's a Brendan Rodgers player. Like good managers want to work with good players, and that's exactly what Brendan Rodgers and Daizen MAEDA are. Oversimplified maybe, but the idea that he wouldn't have worked is...
I could see Daizen MAEDA in any team.
Yeah,
any team. Maybe bar your top, your turbo elite teams that I've got the best. It's
so funny that we're just throwing that out there as if it's
not
something we said about 6 years ago.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, like there's this talk of elite teams, and what we've decided is that the teams above the elite are the turbo elite teams, because we couldn't think of a better way to describe it, and we still can't.
No.
But I mean, you could see Daizen MAEDA played for loads of football clubs, just that second tier down. What I want to talk a wee bit about what clubs have to do to get points and respect and actually take things from games where they're massive underdogs, because I was thinking about this watching the Raith game. I got Melly, me and you, or you and I, we did the post-match podcast. We do one of those for every single Celtic game on Patreon and on Apple and on Substack. And I was quite critical of some of the performances in that game, because even though players played well, I said, so Yang played well, and I got stick for it on Patreon and in the Discord for not being that hot on Yang, even though he set up 2 and scored 1. But my point was, but against who? Who are we playing against here? Because I think often in the past, we've seen players play really well against crap teams, and you get a false impression of how good that guy is, or maybe all that happened there was Yang found his level. He found his level, and listen, beating championship teams is trickier than we all thought. Turns out that isn't a walk in the park, right? But the reverse of that is, well, what can Raith Rovers do against Celtic, against a team that they're much worse than, to get in throughout this game? Because we were watching it, Stephen, and more often than not, these teams, they have 8 or 9 men or 10 men behind the ball. Usually they have 9 men behind the ball, one guy up front in his own who spends the whole game up front in his own, and they just launch the ball up to him. Every chance they get to get out, they launch the ball up, and then everyone else runs up the park to try and offer support. And I'd said to Melly, is it not about these teams try 2 up front? Because you're launching it up to one guy, you might as well launch it up to 2. Then you go 1v1 with the centre backs, go old school, try and win knockdowns, and just, if that's the only tactic you're going to deploy, because for too long we've seen teams try the same thing against Celtic and they never get anything out of it. Dundee didn't get anything out of it, and Raith Rovers didn't get anything out of it. And then my mind turned to, well, what can Celtic? Celtic are now in that position. We're on the flip side of the Raith Rovers conundrum. We're coming up against a much, much better team. We're missing one of our best players. We're missing 2 of our best players if you count Kyogo. What can we do to get something out of this game? I'm not saying we go 2 up front and launch it. We don't even really have that option.
No.
But is there anything we can... But listen to the scouting podcast. It was like a masterclass on here's how they're going to hurt you. It's every way imaginable they're going to hurt you.
It's one of those probably quite difficult to describe things going into a game like that, because coming away from a game like that, we will all know what a good performance feels like if it happens, whereas going in, you might not be able to actually articulate it all that well. We will see how it plays out, and depending on what happens on the night, depending on how Celtic make you feel, I know that's a bit sentimental drivel, right? But if they actually go for it, if they attack Bayern Munich and maybe lose, who knows? There's every chance that Celtic could do everything right on the night and comprehensively lose the game.
Yeah.
That's a distinct possibility at this level. But there's a reason that Rangers fans have recently been kind of slagging Celtic fans for it, because they've kind of built up this narrative that Celtic celebrated the fact that Callum McGregor hit the post against Real Madrid a couple of years ago and then lost the game. But there's a kernel of truth in that, because what it felt like on the night was, we're going at this. There's no fear here, and they're actually going at Real Madrid and they're trying to win the game. Now, I'm not saying go gung-ho and then potentially lose 7-0 at home and then come away thinking, oh, that was brilliant, we really went for it in there. This is what I mean by it's quite hard to articulate what a good performance will feel like until we're actually experiencing it.
There's a bargain there, isn't there? Because, as you say, if we... I definitely think there's a difference to how Rangers fans and Celtic fans perceive how their team should play in these games. Like, Rangers would go into a game like this and really see no problem playing 8 players at the back and
2 full backs out wide,
being ultra defensive, whereas Celtic, there's always, whether it's from the fans or whether it's for the stature of the club, there's all this impetus that, no, we don't do this, we're going to at least attack. But as you say, Stephen, if we did do that, if we did what people kind of expected of us and tried to attack and end up getting battered at the end of it, nobody would really thank you for it, would they? So Celtic are in that bit of a conundrum. I listened to Callum Davidson talk after the game where he beat Rangers, and he said,
what game was that?
It was if you missed it, Rangers got absolutely booted right out the cup by Queen's,
suited and booted at the cup
by Queen's Park. But he said what we did was we knew we weren't going to have an awful lot of the ball, so we really decided we were going to work hard off the ball and really make sure we took our chances if and when they came to us. And to be fair, the guy showed great composure in front of goal to score the goal for Queen's Park. But I was thinking, right, how does that apply to Celtic in Europe? And I can't remember an awful lot of the times where, at home anyway, we've let the opposition have the ball. We always seem to still have more of, even when it's like Real Madrid, there wasn't that, right, you have the ball, come to us and we'll try and pick you off.
That's the difficulty, isn't it? Celtic go into this game, and like every game in Europe, for me, going into this, I want to see Celtic try and play the way they do. If Celtic were going into this game and shut up shop, I think we'd get beat 5-0 anyway.
That's the difficulty in it.
We don't have the players to do it, and to be honest, I don't really want the players to do that. Do I want to see Lundstrom in midfield every week just so it can be all right in Europe for one single season? That's not what I want to see. But from me growing up, from watching Celtic, it's teams that play football. And I think if we can cast our mind back to earlier this season, we sat here and hopefully didn't patronise but praised Falkirk, because they came to Celtic Park, they played their game, and when they attacked, it looked like they had a plan, and they came away from that losing, was it 5-2 in the end? Celtic brought on Cooney, scored a couple of goals, they brought on big players, and look, that can happen.
IDAH got a couple as well, didn't he?
Yeah, teams have got better players than you. That can happen when the quality shines through. But I came away from that thinking, do you know what? Falkirk would be a welcome addition to this. And maybe it's the same for Celtic. Celtic are in that lower bracket in the Champions League. They're not going to be up with the top. But if we can come out of this game looking like we belong at this level, maybe the Real Madrid game is another good comparison where we go, do you know what? We went a million miles off it. They've just got better players and they can bring on players like Eden Hazard and all that at the time. We can't do that at that level. But for Celtic to go into this game and go, right, you know what, we're going to try and play our own game. Yes, sometimes we are going to need to suffer and be without the ball, but that's where the crowd come into it and get the players going. So for me, it's just go out and try and impose yourself in the game, because how many games do you see? Like Jamie Redknapp talked about the Spurs game when they get beat by Liverpool during the week, saying it was one of the most limp performances he's ever seen from a team. They just had nothing. I don't want to see that from Celtic. I want them to go out and go, do you know what? I'm not going to fear this. We're not going to fear this. We're going to try and play our game and pose ourselves on it. It's not going to work all the time. We're not going to have a ball sometimes. But do you know what? When we get it, we're going to try and get forward and we're going to score. We want to see Celtic doing that and launching the ball up to IDAH, him having 40 yards between him and the next player. That's not what I want to see.
This is where outcome plays into it massively. Now, that's an obvious thing to say, and it sounds like fence sitting, but there's the chance that you go into a game like that, you go at a team like Bayern Munich, you try and win the game and you get absolutely battered, and everyone's saying, well, that was ridiculous, you need to be more pragmatic.
Dortmund. That's what everyone said. Remember that part?
Then the chat will immediately be, no, you need to learn how to be more pragmatic in Europe, or else you're going to take a tanking like that, when really that's just, again, it's one of those terms that just gets thrown around outcome based rather
What
than
do you mean
performance
by
based. Yeah, exactly. So it's very easy to say that after you've taken a tanking. But as you've already said, Melly, there's every chance that if you can just go and park the bus, a team like that are still going to batter you. And then the narrative is, well, what was that? That was pathetic. That was cowardly from Celtic. You know, you've come this far and then you've shat the nest and you've
Jim Goodwin did.
Yeah, basically. So this is why it's so difficult to go into such a difficult game and talk about what your aims and objectives should be as a fan. I can't really shake the feeling that I'll be at the game, so I want to sense that Celtic are in this. It might not come to anything, and there's a fair chance, a very strong chance actually, that Celtic might lose the game. Of course there is, right? Because they'll be massive favourites. But this is what I mean. We'll know on the night what it feels like to actually be playing well against a team like that.
A lot of it's just, as you say, watching the players, and you want to see them busting their arse. You want to see them chasing lost causes. You want to see them bravery on the ball. You want to see them trying the difficult pass sometimes, even when it's not on. You don't want to see, when a player's got the ball, that thing that you feel like you see so much of a Celtic. Alistair Johnson in the right back position, he's looking up. He's got Bayern Munich players all around him, but ahead of him, all he's seen is shirt numbers from Celtic players. There's no one looking to take the ball off him. You look as if you're lining up a gag. They've got in your eye.
I just immediately thought of Greg Taylor passing it inside straight to Harry Kane, about 18 yards into, rattles into the top corner. Yes, that's exactly what I'm picturing there.
And on that bombshell, we will wrap up. And if that happens, you can blame Stephen. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us. Patreon.com/20minute Tims, where you can support the podcast. Ignore that little weird thing where I said, and yeah, because I'll try and avoid that as best as I can for any future. Yeah. See you next week.